I can call it from COVID to China virus. I can call it the China plague.
Horrifying reality of what is this modern-day plague.
Deaths exceeding 4 million now from COVID-19.
There have been more than 80,000 animals sequenced in China, and there's not a trace of evidence supporting that hypothesis.
The conspiracy theory they're referring to is one that the virus was man-made or was engineered in this Wuhan lab.
There was a premature push to reduce one of the options, like the lab theory.
The database was taken offline in September 2019.
The world is witnessing one of the worst pandemics in history, and the world is looking for answers. Bioterrorism is a deliberate release of viruses, bacteria, or other germs used to cause disease and death in humans, animals, or plants. According to the WHO, biological agents like anthrax, botulinum toxin, and plague can pose a bigger challenge to public health by causing large number of deaths in a short time. Biological attacks are a potential threat to humanity because they are neither visible nor is there any immediate treatment available. According to the Biological Weapons Convention, biological weapons can be used for many reasons, including military ones, for political assassinations, the contamination of agriculture and livestock, which would cause food scarcity and economic instability, or to trigger epidemics to instill fear and cause chaos. It may be hard to believe, but bioweapons are not an invention of the modern age. The use of biological weapons has been documented as early as the 14th century, when Mongol forces threw plague-infested bodies over a barricade and into the Black Sea port of Kaffa. The British used bioweapons against Native Americans in the 18th century. British troops are said to have intentionally given blankets and handkerchiefs infected with smallpox to Native American tribes, triggering widespread illness and death. More recently, Germany used bioweapons to target horses and cattle used by their opponents during the First World War. German troops reportedly infected animals with bacteria that caused glanders. The aim was to cripple the Allied armies in terms of logistics and transport. It was the Germans again who were accused of attempting to spread cholera in Italy and plague in St. Petersburg in order to undermine Russian forces in 1915. The widespread destruction caused by the use of biological weapons in World War I acted as an alarm call. 38 countries signed the 1925 Geneva Protocol, a treaty prohibiting the use of chemical and biological weapons in international armed conflict. However, during the Second World War, Japan violated the treaty. It engaged in a large secretive biological weapons program and dropped bacteria bombs in China. Bacillus anthracis, the bacteria that causes anthrax, is one of the most used agents for biological attacks. The first use of anthrax as a bioweapon dates back to the early 20th century during World War I. Anthrax spores are easily found in nature and can be produced in a lab and can last for a long time in the environment. It makes for a good weapon because it can be released quietly and without raising suspicion. The microscopic spores could be put in powders, sprays, food, and water.
The science is evolving. We know more today than we did yesterday. Every day we're learning something in regards to the anthrax scare and bioterrorism. We're not only looking at just anthrax, we're looking at the whole spectrum.
The latest among other instances of the use of anthrax is in 2001, when powdered anthrax spores were deliberately put into letters that were mailed through the US postal system. 22 people, including 12 mail handlers, got anthrax and 5 people reportedly lost their lives. The prime suspect, Dr. Bruce Ivins, took his own life in 2008, just days before the FBI named him in a high-profile press conference.
just laid out, there's plenty of evidence in this case of all types. We have a flask that's effectively the murder weapon from which those spores were taken that was controlled by Dr. Ivans. Anthrax in that flask was created by Dr. Ivans. We have the suspicious behavior that he had undertaken over the years. We have, in addition, the mail envelopes with the tool stamp defects I had mentioned.
It's still not clear whether Dr. Ivans was indeed the mastermind of the anthrax attacks. Media reports added a new twist by revealing Dr. Ivans had developed an anthrax vaccine and may have wanted to profit from an anthrax scare. But questions were later raised about the FBI's bioforensics as well, ultimately leading to an overhaul of their systems in 2014.
My question is, have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I think that the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves because they're like the public relations agency for China.
Vírus novo, ninguém sabe se nasceu em laboratório ou nasceu por algum ser humano ingerir um animal inadequado. Mas está aí. Os militares sabem o que é guerra química, bacteriológica e radiológica. Será que nós estamos enfrentando uma nova guerra? Qual o país que mais cresceu seu PIB? Não vou dizer para vocês.
In recent years, China has been heavily investing in strategically important sectors in science, technology, and biomedicine. The first BSL-4 lab was built at the Wuhan Institute of Virology of the Chinese Academy of Science in 2017. The facility houses the largest virus bank in the continent with more than 1,500 strains.
We know that there have been 19,000 bat samples that the Wuhan Institute of Virology has collected over the years, some 2,000 or 3,000 coronavirus samples out of all of that. The virus database was taken offline in September 2019, right before the start of the outbreak, mysteriously taken offline.
Researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were reportedly performing gain-of-function experiments where a natural virus is modified to become more virulent or to better infect humans. They were led by China's leading expert on bat viruses, Dr. Shizheng Li, or the Batwoman as she quickly became known. According to a report in The Australian, Chinese scientists discussed weaponizing coronavirus 5 years before the outbreak of the pandemic. The Australian report quoted a document purportedly written by People's Liberation Army scientists and senior Chinese public health officials. This document described SARS coronaviruses as heralding a new era of genetic weapons. The report claims that in the document, the Chinese military scientists predicted that a third world war would be fought with biological weapons.
The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally?
The issue that would have someone think it's possible to have escaped from a lab would mean that it essentially entered the outside human population already well adapted to humans, suggesting that it was adapted in the lab. However, the alternative explanation, which most public health individuals go by, is that this virus was actually circulating in China, likely in Wuhan, for a month or more before they were clinically recognized at the end of December of 2019.
China's reluctance to allow in independent investigators muddied the waters even further. For several months, the country stalled the entry of international experts. After much back and forth, a WHO investigation ruled out the Wuhan laboratory incident hypothesis. However, the world was quick to question its credibility due to the limited access provided by China.
We need information, direct information, on what the situation of these labs was before and at the start of the pandemic.
We didn't have access China wasn't transparent enough. We have been saying that for a very long time, that China needed to provide more access to the lab, cooperate more fully with the scientific investigators, and we don't think that they have met that standard.
Despite a worldwide call for more information about the virus, the Chinese government has reportedly not been allowing access to critical details about its research on coronaviruses.
We don't have certainty, and there is significant evidence that this came from the laboratory. Those statements can both be true. I've made them both. Administration officials have made them. They're all true.
来主导结论，这只能说明美方根本不在乎事实真相，根本不想搞科学研究，只是一心玩弄政治，对他国甩锅推责。
This whole process is being poisoned by politics. And if you expect scientists to do their work, if you expect scientists to collaborate and actually get the answers that you want, actually seek in a non-blame environment to find the origin of the virus so we may all learn how to prevent this happening in future, we would ask that this be done in a depoliticized environment where science and health is the objective of this and not blame and politics.
But with lives, economies and governments at stake, politics was inescapable, and China, impenetrable and difficult to deal with, became the inevitable villain of the piece. After the outbreak of the virus was reported, many scientists argued that the most plausible explanation is the natural emergence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Scientists who supported the theory of natural origin believed that the virus jumped from bats or an intermediary species to humans in a random event sometime in 2019. A joint investigation by the World Health Organization and China backed the possibility of an animal origin.
The findings suggest that the laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely.
新冠病毒可能源于人畜共患的传播，但其组成宿主有待进一步明确。
This hypothesis was widely accepted at the start of the pandemic. However, this particular coronavirus has not yet been recovered from bats or any other animal that matches the genetic makeup of COVID-19, casting doubt over the theory of animal origin. So while it is possible that it did spread to humans from animals, there is no positive proof so far that COVID-19 evolved naturally. There is no positive proof of this either, but there's plenty of circumstantial evidence which has led many to believe that COVID-19 was a man-made disaster. At the heart of this theory is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which has been studying coronaviruses in bats for over a decade. The institute is reportedly 2 miles away from the Huanan wet market, where the first cluster of infections emerged in Wuhan. Those who supported the theory say it could have leaked from a Wuhan Institute of Virology lab and spread to the wet market. Others believe there may be a possibility that the virus evolved naturally, but an employee at the lab became infected from a sample and accidentally leaked it in the community.
Bats had been kept in cages at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We need to know which bats, which province were the bats from, because this is a very real possibility that a virus could have infected a laboratory worker directly from the bats, or a coronavirus sample from the bats may have been subject to genetic manipulation in the laboratory.
A US intelligence report identified 3 researchers at a Wuhan lab who sought treatment at a hospital after falling ill in November 2019. It emphasized on the hypothesis that COVID-19 virus may have spread to humans after it escaped from a Chinese research lab in Wuhan. But the evidence was far from conclusive. The Chinese Foreign Ministry dismissed the conclusion and accused the US of political manipulation. On 26 May, President Joe Biden ordered US intelligence agencies to investigate the possibility of an accidental lab leak. Close to 2 years since the first registered COVID-positive case, the theories around its origin have multiplied like the virus itself. Are we any closer to answers? The theory that COVID was developed as a bioweapon is unlikely. The risks appear too great, the cost to China too high, and there is no evidence at all to support this theory. However, there are many who believe COVID-19 is man-made, even if not a bioengineered weapon, and that a manipulated virus sample was accidentally released from a research facility. However, there is no direct proof of this so far, though circumstantial evidence includes the fact that Wuhan Institute of Virology was researching coronaviruses, and there are reports of 3 researchers here falling ill in November 2019. This is the theory pushed by China and the World Health Organization in the past. But again, there's no proof to back the animal origin theory. This particular strain of SARS-CoV-2 has not been detected in any animal so far. China has been repeatedly asserting that the virus originated in Wuhan's wet market, but there isn't enough convincing evidence to back the country's claims. China pushing this opinion on the rest of the world begs the question, what is the country hiding? And while the pandemic might not be a direct act of bioterrorism, it's still an open question, whether China was culturing the virus to use it another day. In an age when terrorism has been a global issue, biological weapons are perhaps perfectly suited for warfare. They're cheap, easy to transmit, virtually invisible, and can inflict large-scale destruction. Of course, bioweapons have one huge downside for those who deploy them. They are difficult to control. The risk of a pandemic or uncontrolled death and disease is very real. There's no definitive proof yet that COVID-19 is a bioweapon, but there's no denying that it has ripped apart our fragile society. The pandemic has proved very effectively that we live in a vulnerable world, a world where guns and tanks are no longer the biggest threat. Is this the beginning of the new age bioterrorism?